Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to some work in progress here on Bandai's Sandland Tank 104 kit. Now, if you guys saw the review already, you know that I've actually already got this all sanded, and the only real seam lines it had were on these parts here, and I've already got those seam lines removed there as well. So pretty much it's all paint ready as it is, but there are a couple of things that I want to do before we go at least start putting some surfacer on this. The first thing would be for the flag. If you remember from the review, we had two parts for the flag. The first option was this part here with this kind of like softer plastic part here for the flagpole so it doesn't break, which is nice. Then you have the flag molded on there. And then it did include a metal part, which I thought was like kind of a little bit too thick. It's actually kind of like the same as this, but this being a plastic part, you would expect, you know, they don't want to make it too much thinner than that, it'll be too brittle. I think the thickness on that was probably like 1.5 millimeters, but I decided to grab some 1 millimeter brass rod here. Just because it's a bit thinner, I think it looks a bit more realistic to the size. And then I bent this to make it look like it's kind of like blowing in the wind, because we're gonna have this on our base, right? And with the smoke and everything, it's kind of meant to look like it's kind of cruising along. So I think it just makes sense for the flag to also look like it's kind of, you know, like, I don't know, blowing in the wind, is that right? It's not exactly right. Anyway, just this piece here can also indicate movement there with that just being bent like that. And I'll add the flag on it later, but there's another bit that I want to add on here too real quick. A lot of people will just use like the spring from like a bass guitar string or something, but I don't have any of that on hand, so I'm going to use some of this Wave A spring. This is 1.5 millimeter, and I want to basically just cut a small little section of this here, and I'm basically going to glue this in place as the base of our little wire there. I think I might actually cut that even a little bit shorter, but it'll be something like that. Let me go ahead and glue this. Very happy with that. I think that looks pretty nice, and then we'll add the flag later on, but for now, that's an improvement. The only other real thing that I want to add to this is, of course, some of those rivet details that we had on these runner markers here. So these, as I mentioned in the review, are just little bits that you can just slice off of there with a knife and just kind of glue them around on the kit where you please. So I'm going to do that, and I have like quite a few of these because every runner had some of those on there. I'm gonna use these darker colored ones here first, just so that you guys can see like very clearly where I'm adding them on. Also just gonna close up all the doors here for the time being so we can focus on the exterior, and then just using a pencil, just going to mark kind of where I wanna put this. So like just trying to think about it realistically, right? On the underside of the door here, there's this handle there, like handlebar. So you would imagine there might be like a little kind of bolt or rivet here on the opposite side, just kind of holding that in place. And of course you could actually measure that out to be precise, but I'm probably just gonna eyeball it, and it looks to be kind of about right, I think, on there. And as I said, we're just going to very carefully with a knife slice one of these off here. Well, two that we're gonna use for this part. And then using some extra thin cement, just going to dot a little dot of glue onto here where the part's gonna go. And using our tweezers, we can just place it on there. And the extra thin cement does give you a little bit of time to kind of adjust it around as needed. It's not like once you stick it on there, it's just like stuck permanently on there in place. And if it is not the right placement, I mean, just cut it off, sand it down, and then just get another one. Fortunately, we have lots of those little rivet details. All right, so I think I'm done now. Added a couple here at the back, a couple around there at the top, and then onto each of the doors there. Right here, I added the 104 basically from the runner there, just kind of very carefully slice that off. So the 104 and then the last two kanji there after that is just for like the 104 like numbered tank like that, numbered vehicle. I tried adding those on there too, but like the kanji is just like too fine. I just couldn't get it. I might try again slicing that off of the yellow runner here maybe, or I might just stick with the 104. The 104 came out okay, and then there's like a rough spot there where I had to just scratch that off. I need to wait for the glue to dry a bit more, and then I'll just have to sand that smooth, that rough spot after that. But the 104 came out okay. That'll make for a nice little detail there. Once painted over, it'll be kind of just like a subtle raised little detail there. I've seen that done many times, and I've contemplated doing it many times on different like machining Krieger builds and stuff like that, but never ended up trying it. But I think it'll work pretty well for this one, just to have that 104 kind of molded detail on it. But for now, I need to sand that, but otherwise we can just start disassembling this for painting. Now I am gonna hand paint this, but I want to disassemble it a little bit just for doing the surface or painting, and then just for like hand painting as well. Some of that we'll do while it's assembled and some while it's disassembled, but at least for the purposes of doing our surfacer, and I realized I just broke the head off of that guy. Fortunately, that'll be easy to glue back on. That is not wanting to come out of there very easily. But yeah, for the purposes of doing our surfacer, our priming, I want to make sure that I get a good coat, because we're going to be painting like everything on the inside as well as on the outside. And so I need to, normally I would, if I'm going to be hand painting it, normally I would just use just spray can, just kind of spray can over the entirety of the outside of it. But using airbrush will allow me to be that much more thorough with the paint, making sure I can get that nice black coating over everything before we start in our painting. So I'm going to use black surfacer for this, just to give us that nice, rich, deep coloring. And that also helps for weathering, especially if we're going to be hand painting as we are. And I'll show you guys that process, how I'm going to be doing that. If I can only get this out of here. There we go. So I'll have to glue the head back on this guy before we start painting it, and we'll talk about the figure painting separately later, because these I'll spray them with surfacer, with black surfacer like everything else, but then for painting them I got kind of like a new tool that I want to try out that should be helpful for that. But here is how I've got it broken down. So I'll just spray surfacer on each of these sections. So basically our base section, and I might take this side panel off of here just so I can make sure I can get some good surfacer sprayed, especially in like behind those parts. Kind of, it's not really going to be visible, but just to be thorough. We've got the two side panels, the top section here, the interior, which is also the back side, is kind of one section here like this, and then the front section like that, and then the base. So this part is probably the only part which I'm not going to hand paint. I think I'll probably just airbrush this, because I want this part to be like super clean compared to everything else. And I think I have a good idea about how I might want to do that, so we'll come back to that one. For now, let me just go and get some surfacer sprayed on everything. All right, so with some black surfacer here, I've got everything all ready to go. Everything's all coated in black now. But one thing that I do also want to add to this is some lights. So I got this little battery powered set of fairy lights here. Let me turn this on. So I've used a similar set like this before, and they work really well, and you can get these sets for like really cheap. So you just need somewhere to stick the battery pack. So for this, I'm actually going to cut a space here in the bottom for the battery pack to go into, and actually thinking about making like a wood block base that's the same hexagonal shape that will fit underneath this, and I can cut a little space to keep the battery pack. And then we'll just drill a hole up through the bottom of this and up into the bottom of the tank, and then we just need to string the lights on the inside. That will make the inside illuminated, so that even though it's just like a small gap that we'll be able to see through, that being just like the side door and the front door that'll be open, even though it's like a small gap there, I want to be able to see inside very well, because I'm going to paint the inside, and so if we're going to paint the inside, we want to be able to see it. So I figure putting some lights in there will work. Now this is, I think, something like 7 foot length, and I don't have to use it all, so I'm probably going to ultimately end up cutting that to a shorter length. But I'll just string some of those lights into here so that we have some illumination here on the inside that will help to make the inside more visible. Now, one thing that's going to make this a lot easier to do that and just to paint is if we can assemble these sections separately, basically having like our inside section here that we can paint, and then this section. Now it's just a couple of pieces, basically each side section and then this back piece, but the way that these fit on, you kind of have to put them on separately, because this back part here just fits down on onto this peg there like that. And then the side parts you need to attach in from the side. That's because you can see you have these like groove sections that fit into here, 1, 2, and 3 of those sections that need to fit in from the side. But I want to be able to have this back section and the side sections all connected together, and to be able to just like fit over the top later on without having to disassemble this more, so that I can like have the wires up through here for the lights. So in order to do that, basically all we need to do is just cut out this bottom section. Let me just make that real easy for you guys to see what I mean, just by scraping away the black surfacer there. So basically that bit right there, I just need to cut that out, and then this won't be then securely fastened onto the side of the base of the tank, but it'll still be plenty well connected via the peg there at the back, and then I can just glue it if it's loose or anything, but I don't really expect that to be an issue. And I'm really just kind of realizing that I think it's going to be a little bit more of a complicated process of painting this, just because the way this LED is. Basically how I want to have this is to be able to be strung up through the base. It means that everything has to flow like kind of one way, and so it's not like I can install the wires and stuff and then just put this like down through the base later. Everything has to go up from the bottom of the base, so that basically means I have to kind of like paint this part first so that I can have the LED going up through it. And so it's going to complicate the process a little bit, just because I'm using just this cheap LED system. Obviously, if I was using a system that I would just make myself, I could just make a plug or something right here that could be plugged in at the end of the construction process, and it would make it a lot easier. But hey, this is the way that I'm doing it. Right now I just have all the LEDs, like this whole string, just stuffed inside there at the moment while I was kind of like thinking about how I want to go about this. But I think the way to go is going to be, yeah, painting the base first, or at least having kind of the base paint on the base, and then we'll kind of like work basically from like the base up. But I did finish the modification to this section here, which will allow me to just be able to pop this onto there like I was talking about. I think I may need to do that here for the front part as well, which would just basically involve the same thing, just cutting out that bit there. But yeah, I'm definitely not going to need this full string, and I'll have to cut this shorter later on down the line of the process. But yeah, so I think what I need to do is just go ahead and paint the base and paint like kind of the base colors here on the outside, and then start painting the inside and the characters so that those can be installed on the inside. And basically the interior will be all done, and I'll also have to paint the interior of the walls in here, and so I'll basically have to finish the entirety of the interior of the kit so that I can then put the LEDs where I want them. Where I'm thinking basically it's just going to be a ring around the top, and once the LEDs are installed and all the painting on the inside and the characters are all done, basically I'll just close this all up, and then we'll do our painting on the outside and like kind of the rest of the finish work there. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit of like a complicated process, unfortunately. So for now, for the base, I thought about adding some like actual sand to texture this a little bit, but I think what I'm going to do actually just kind of a little bit easier way, just because I'm not worried about this being like super, like, I don't know, I guess like professional grade weathering, where you would probably want to use some like actual sand and small rocks and something to like really make this look super realistic. And then also, you know, of course we will do some weathering here on the outside, adding some different sand texture and stuff like that. But basically I think what will work well enough for my purposes for this is just adding some texture by smearing some glue on this, and then giving it the old toothbrush treatment to just give it a rough texture basically. So let's go ahead and try that. I've done this before, you guys may have seen me do this in a video before, or maybe not, but basically just involves taking some extra thin cement and rubbing this on here everywhere. I want to leave the rocks as they are, but all the rest of the area kind of in between the rocks, which is meant to look like sand, right? And I don't need to worry so much about like underneath the tank, it's not really going to be very visible at all. But you want to get a good amount of glue on here just so that it starts to soften up the plastic a bit. And so once this glue has had a little bit of time to start working, basically starting to melt the plastic, then we want to just, I'm just going to dap this with my toothbrush. Here's not my an old toothbrush anyway. And I have to go over that again, but as you can hopefully see, it creates a rougher texture here compared to just how the plastic is just molded straight out of the box. So I think I might go over that some more, add some more glue, and go over that a bit more just to basically kind of roughen this up. But let me go ahead and do that. Then I'm gonna get some primer on here, and then we'll start working on just our base colors on the base. And a short time later, here is the effect on that. Just a little bit added texture to the surface, which I think will look nice with some paint on there. Plenty nice enough, like I said, for my purposes for this. So that looks pretty good. We'll set that to the side for the time being. Now for painting the characters, I'm a bit worried about trying to paint some of the smaller details on here, especially the eyes in particular. But I do have this new tool that I was recently given here from Chaos. The painting handle is actually from the maker ZakuAurelius. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but anyway, it's just this painting handle. A lot of times people use this kind of stuff for painting miniatures and stuff, so it's actually the perfect opportunity for me to use this to crack this open. As you can see, we basically have 3 parts included. We have our main handle here in wood, very nice. This little cutout bit here just to kind of hold it like that. This part here is a bearing inside, it's magnetized. You can just stick to there. You can rotate, so you could just glue or whatever your subject onto the top of here, or just with some putty or whatever you might want to use for that. Alternatively, this one here has a 3mm hole in it that fits over the top without a magnet, just fits into the center of the bearing there basically. This one spins a lot faster there, actually quite fast, since it's just basically on a bearing. Whereas this magnetized one, I like that it's it doesn't spin like that basically, it only turns as much as you'll turn it. So I kind of prefer that. I might try like adding a piece of tape or something here onto the inside just to like slow this one down, but it's kind of fine. And then if you unscrew this part here, you can add this kind of additional stabilizer piece here as well, making it look very much like a little hand grenade. But that, I think I might, I can have to play with this to kind of figure out what's like a comfortable angle for holding this, something like that, I'm not sure. Anyway, but that just goes on there. And so the problem is our characters have a little peg on the bottom of their feet, which does not fit into here. So there's a couple of ways that you could go ahead and attach these on. I actually had the bright idea to basically just make like an adapter. So it's using a piece of a runner, which is 3mm and should fit into there like that. And then the second hole in there is 2mm, I think it was, and that should fit our actual character. So then I can stick the character onto the adapter piece like that and be able to paint it here on the stand. So I made 3 of those, one for each of our little character figures that we've got here. We're here like that. And so basically just gonna move ahead and get these guys painted up, and then we can start working on the interior of the tank, and we'll like I said, just kind of take it step by step like that. All right, so after a bunch of hand painting, here's how some of the interior details looking there. Picked out a few of the little bits of detail here and there. I will add some more detail painting to this. This is just kind of like the base layer. And then here on the interior, went for more of like a RLM gray-green kind of color here for the interior. And this I'll also pick out some of the details with some more hand painting later on. Basically for now, I need to go in and start doing like some of like the wash on the inside. And then for the characters as well, just all the base painting here is done. These need detail painting, and especially on Beelzebub here. All of the base colors are done, and then it's just a matter of adding the details and stuff here to these. So I think they're looking pretty good. All of the painting there was just done using a bunch of different SMS colors. These are just lacquers, but they're pretty thin, so it just makes it kind of easier to hand paint. You can just pour a little paint out, and you don't even have to add any thinner. I do add a little bit of thinner here and there, like as needed, but generally you kind of don't really need to. So I'm gonna work on the details and weathering, kind of wash a little bit on the inside of the model, kind of finish up these parts. And then in the next video, we'll work on working on like getting the wiring done on the inside inside so that we can then work on the outside and finishing up the kit. So till then, guys, thanks so much for checking out the video. Check out some more kits, tools, paints, and supplies at usagundamstore.com. The link is down there in the video description. And as always, thanks so much for all of your support. Leaving a like, comment, and subscribing is all greatly appreciated. So until next time, hope you guys are all having a good day, and see y'all later. Bye-bye.